Welcome to another session of Technology by Performix. I'm Ken Umansky, your host, and today we're going to take another journey into the world of technology. Today, my guest is Dr. Cory Goldberg. Dr. Goldberg completed his plastic surgery residence at the University of Toronto, which included the Surgeon Scientist program, earning him a Master of Applied Science in Biomedical Engineering with a thesis on stem cells and tissue engineering. His private plastic surgery practice is in Toronto, and he volunteers with Operation Smile doing cleft lip and palate surgery around the world, including missions to Cambodia, Egypt, Honduras, and Bolivia. He earned an executive MBA in international business from Cornell and Queen's Schools of Business and co-founded HealthSpan Digital in 2023. His mission is to align aesthetics and healthy longevity by leveraging AI data analytics with lifestyle and evidence-driven therapeutic interventions. Whew, boy, that was a mouthful. An impressive background.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Dr. Goldberg, and if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to call you Cory, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine, Ken. And thank you so much for the introduction. I appreciate it and looking forward to our conversation.
Terrific. You know what I'm really interested in is, and I know my audience is probably going to be interested in, is hearing how you use AI data analytics to align aesthetics and health longevity to help your patients change their lifestyles. I think that would be really interesting, especially using that technology to help outcomes. That's really important. So let's get started. Tell me a little bit about what is longevity. I know what I think longevity is, but you probably have a different definition, I'm sure.
Sure enough. Well, honestly, I don't know that there's a really good single definition of longevity, but from a very practical point of view, the concept is simply about expanding lifespan and helping people to live longer. But of course, what goes along with that is not just the length of someone's life, but rather making sure to maximize their health span, the sort of quantity or overall health that someone has. For a longer amount of time, so that people can enjoy a vital life and one both where they're healthy and beautiful. So the concept of health span and beauty span do fit together. So we're not just looking to expand the amount of time someone's alive, but actually maximize their health and help them to live well, while they're on Earth.
Well, that's kind of like I would have talked about longevity, so that's impressive. Um, how's AI being applied in longevity research?
So, on the research side, before we get into the clinical end, on the research side of things, there's quite a lot of research tools using AI. So, AI is being used, for example, to develop biomarkers and ways of tracking longevity. So, one of the most important parts of longevity is data analysis and being able to look for markers that help you identify, issues of health before they become a problem. Before someone becomes sick or has a heart attack, what do you measure? What are you looking for that can help you predict those things in the future? And so what those biomarkers are, whether it's blood tests or genetic testing, we don't know exactly what the measurements are. So there's actually a lot of companies using AI identifying specific biomarkers that we could then test for, whether those are blood tests that we can look at, or whether it's genetic sequences that people have, and we're figuring out what those are so that we can make that a part of our sort of standard of care, to identify patients at risk. There are some really interesting companies out there. There's one called In Silico Medicine that's doing that and actually also then developing therapeutics to address those biomarkers. So identifying things that can be measured that are issues, but then also at the same time having a full pipeline in which they can develop therapeutics and treatments to address the biomarkers and the measurements that are abnormal. So AI is really driving that in terms of finding those biomarkers and also therapeutics that can address them.
How accurate are those measurements?
So, I mean, that's a great question, and the measurements are based on real data. What are So what are the clinical outcomes or measures that you can actually identify? And then what are sort of the underlying proteins or chemical that you find in the blood, which then drive those markers. So the accuracy of most of these things achieves 95 to 98%. Mathematically speaking, and that's plenty to sort of make an appropriate decision in R&D as far as taking something to the next step. Full pipeline to actually get a therapeutic into approved by FDA or Health Canada, that's a longer process, and there's more uncertainties along the way. But using the AI data analysis, certainly improves the likelihood of finding a successful candidate that you can then champion along that pathway.
So if you take a sample of blood and you try and analyze that, AI is really coming into getting all the data from the databases that exist in order to be able to be more accurate.
I think that's a fair way of looking at it. Yeah. So that, now we're starting to transfer into the clinical realm. So, if you took an individual patient, and with, available data and biomarkers that we have now, you could take, the blood work from that patient, combine it with data from, other sources, including imaging like MRI, including their, electrocardiogram, ECG, including their wearables and ongoing data collection from Fitbits and Apple Watches, etc. That data can all be collated, and put through AI engines in order to identify risks for patients, cardiovascular risk of future development of Parkinson's disease. It actually, those kinds of sort of large scale data analytics for clinical use actually can take all that information and give you in real time your current risk 10 years from now of having heart disease. And the power of that, of course, is that allows people to change their behaviors. And so in the clinical side of things, one of the companies that I'm really excited about is something called Longevity AI. And that's one of those data analytics companies where you can feed your biomarkers and your blood work as well as your wearables. And any and all data that can be accumulated can be fed through this, and the database is based on about 1,500 scientifically vetted articles, which then give analysis and advice on how to manage those parameters. So an individual could put their information in and literally be told, here are the steps that you can take in a behavioral fashion. Here's what you can do, actively to change your risk of heart disease in 10 years. And that's really exciting for me because that means patients now can actually take care of themselves.
So do you see that AI is having an impact on outcomes?
You know what I do, because I would say, a lot of these things will be long term. A lot of these things will be, 10 years or 20 years from now that we will see the, decreases in heart attacks and strokes and, all those things. But in real time, these things can identify, issues that could be much more imminent. I mean, there are definitely, biomarkers that people walk around with that are, measures of severe risks for cardiovascular disease that don't necessarily get picked up on in routine lab work or with a physician looking over it, but put in the bigger context with a full set of data, can actually pick up imminent really high risk issues, and that's enough to get a patient to seek further care from a physician, have a deeper set of blood work parameters done. So, in reality, in real time, someone could have identified, a very serious risk that, could be a heart attack in the next couple of years if they don't change, their behavior and their lifestyle.
Okay, here's the next question. What AI technology or technologies has had the most potential for disrupting clinical care?
I think that that'll be on the clinical side again, and I think that the package that I feel has the most potential for disrupting care, it's a specific company. It's called Nexus AI, and sorry, AI Nexus rather. And AI Nexus is it's a company that has leveraged the camera on a standard cell phone, and with a facial scan using a camera phone, for 60 seconds. The data that's collected from that is, passed through two levels of AI analytics in their platform. And what they're able to do from that is identify first off a set of vital signs, and second off risk factors for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Parkinson's disease. And so this could be done remotely. And a physician, for example, could ping their patient to scan themselves, and identify these things. And the data behind this is very robust. This is from a data set over 10 years of a million charts from the Mayo Clinic. And so using that amount of data and putting it into this application, people can scan themselves. So, in North America, for example, there's a huge potential benefit for that. But if you look a little bit more broadly on a global perspective, internationally, there's lots of places where access to physicians is very limited, and it's difficult to seek care. This is a way of transforming the common cell phone into a data analytic, a data gathering and analytics tool, and immediately identifying someone who's at risk for diabetes or who has an abnormal heart rate, atrial fibrillation or something like that, and can be told immediately there's something going on, and an essential healthcare system can monitor that, pick up and bring patients in. So it's sort of like a pre-physician or a physician extender. So suddenly populations, a very large population with few physicians available could have better healthcare, and the people who are at greatest risk, who actually have things developing, can be identified and brought forward to seek proper care. So I see this as a way of actually, getting healthcare to a much broader set of people, and I think that's a really powerful tool. I think that's going to change global health.
So what is the camera scanning that it's reading to be able to get that accurate amount of data?
That's a great question. It's taking in shape, color, movement, all told, and so the model that I've seen, it shows a wireframe. It can actually develop a three-dimensional model of the face. It shows the movement, so it can identify people who are having stroke or facial paralysis and movement issues, and simply by collecting that much data from and collating it with the charts and the records of the medical patients from the Mayo Clinic, putting all that together allows them to first off translate the facial scan into a set of vital signs, and those vital signs with the facial scan then go into the next level of AI analysis, which then comes out with all of these predictors. And again, that range, the mathematically what they state with each one is around 95 to 98% confidence interval. So again, enough to at least identify at-risk patients and issues to follow up on.
Does it have an application to when you're doing plastic surgery and rebuilding someone's face or jaw?
It does actually. So this particular company, actually, AI Nexus, is also has a component where they can do the 3D reconstruction of the face, and identify ratios. So there, in the aesthetic world, there are golden ratios as far as the ratio of the length to the projection of the nose, or the segments of the thirds of the face. Those things actually can come out from this. So this can actually analyze places where there's volume deficiency or asymmetries. It actually can also assess for skin cancers and sun damage. So putting all that together, it's a tool that can help model and plan surgery, and it's also a tool that can help identify actual skin disease, and things that need to be managed.
Wow. Stay tuned, right?
Yeah, yep. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that these are going to become very commonplace tools, in our day-to-day healthcare, in our day-to-day aesthetic care, and globally speaking, I really believe this is going to make a dramatic difference in healthcare.
So that gets me to my next question. What's the future of AI and longevity science? Where's it going?
I think for all the topics we've talked about, I think that's where the clinical side is going. What really excites me, I think, beyond that is the research side. On the research side of things, one of the limitations in longevity is data analysis. It's experimentation, and it's very difficult to do longevity experiments in humans because we live so long, and no one's going to fund a study for 100 years. It's simply not plausible. So really, a lot of the information that we have and the decisions we make on longevity are based on animal studies. But animal studies have limitations because, of course, animals are similar to us but different enough that you can't always draw direct conclusions. So I think that there's a future in AI analysis of animal studies and being able to compare the multiple animal studies at different levels and translate that into human conclusions. So I know that there are companies that are developing AI analytics that will allow that sort of cross-species R&D conclusions. So I think that's really exciting because that'll mean that we can do experimentation in a handful of non-human species and then be able to draw conclusions that would be applicable to humans. So I think that that's a very exciting one. Another one that I'm really, really excited about that I think is going to be very cool is protein engineering. So there is a program that's been released. It's open source code. It's called AlphaFold 2. And this was published in Nature in 2021. And AlphaFold 2 is a program, an AI-driven program that's actually able to synthesize a protein. It's actually able to decide what sequence of amino acids are put together to create a protein with certain function. So you can actually kind of figure out how a protein will fold. And so the importance of that is, proteins do all sorts of great things in our body. We can, potentially use them to fight inflammation and fight cancer. With this program, because it can identify how a protein folds, we can then reverse engineer from that. If we can figure out what sequence of amino acids it does and how it folds into a protein, we can reverse engineer from that. How do you make a particular protein? If you wanted a protein that would, attach to a certain receptor and block it, like blocking the estrogen receptors in a breast cancer, but not blocking the estrogen receptors in normal cells. You could potentially engineer a protein that would do that. So, protein engineering, I think, is going to be something that becomes more mainstream.
So could you do that with dementia and Alzheimer's, the proteins in the brain?
Quite possibly. Again, we would be looking to engineer proteins that can cross the blood-brain barrier and would potentially reduce oxidative stress that's causing it, or potentially clean up other molecules that have accumulated that are waste molecules that we need to be cleaned up and taken away by our lymphatic or our clean out system that cleans things out. So we could develop proteins that actually have certain functions. So I mean, the sky's the limit. You just, you have to, think about how would you accomplish something and what's the protein you need to do it, put it into a program like this, and it will tell you, here's the sequence of amino acids, and then we can start printing proteins and actually creating molecules to have function.
That's really exciting. Wow. Well,
It
unfortunately,
is.
listen, I could talk all night, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. Let me thank you for sharing with us your insight onto longevity and where longevity is going with the use of AI. How can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to talk to you?
Well, I guess the two best ways, Instagram at Dr. Cory Goldberg, MD. You can certainly hit me up there. I have a website, beautyspan.com. And beautyspan.com is sort of the place where I'm putting the information that's kind of bringing healthspan and beauty span and sort of the health and beauty worlds together. And we'll be sorting up a newsletter there shortly. So if you sign up there, you're certainly welcome to go there and look for more information as well. Beautyspan.com.
Terrific. Thank you.
It
Don't
is
miss
my
an
pleasure.
episode of Technology when we'll discuss how technology is changing a lot of other business sectors. Remember, you can always find technology podcasts on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, and SoundCloud. Easy for me to say. And if you need help with any size technology challenge, please contact Performance Business Services at performixbiz.com. I'm your host, Ken Umansky, and until we meet again on another technology podcast, keep innovating.